A famous chart pattern is what's called head and shoulders, because it looks like a head with two shoulders. It's a head and shoulders. And really you're looking at this head and shoulders with these resistance and support breaks or lines that are part of that. And it's part of an overall trend, and where the trend will head once it gets through this head and shoulders period, it might be a period of change. So let's take a look at an actual chart with head and shoulders and be looking for this type of pattern in your investments. Okay, so first off, do you see the head and shoulders? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's okay if you don't. It's not readily apparent, by the way, but you might see a head and some shoulders. Let me overlay this a little bit here. How about now? This is the idea of a head and shoulder pattern, where you have a head or a peak, and then you have two shoulders that, sub-peaks in effect that are part of that. So what's going on here is, in this case, where our prices are rising, we've risen up to a shoulder. We don't know it when we're up to that first shoulder that this is happening, by the way. We just see sharply rising prices. Then the prices fall to this resistance line, or excuse me, to the support line. Also can be termed in the head and shoulder chart as a neckline, like that's your neck, I guess, if you're looking at a person. But that's when the net, so that's the support line, is prices have fallen to that support line, but they haven't gone past that support line. They've rebounded off that support line and gone up higher past the shoulder, past the left shoulder, up even higher to the head, to its next peak. And you'll have certainly trading amongst there won't be in necessarily a smooth line like this, might be up and down, but the overall trend is what you'll see when you draw your trend lines, is you're heading to this head. And we reach our peak, and then what? Now we go back down again to our other shoulder, right? So we're going back down, but we don't break through the support line again. It bounces back up to that right shoulder. Now we're on our right shoulder, and then it hits the shoulder and then comes back down to the support line. The key with this is the shoulders will be about the same. If it doesn't rebound to that shoulder, you're not in a head and shoulder situation. And if it goes past the shoulder, you're not in a head and shoulder situation. Because what's happening is that these different peaks, people are buying and selling. At the head, it's reached a real peak and people are like, I got to get out. This is about as high as it's going to get. And at the shoulders, it's almost forming like a new support line at the shoulders for a short instant before it goes down to the actual support line, which is the neckline. So as you see the pattern develop, you can kind of see what's happening. And so if I go up the first shoulder, I don't know what's happening, goes down, and then goes up to that head, and then comes back down and he reaches that support line and starts heading back up to that shoulder, that right shoulder. I might look at that period as a period of opportunity, saying, I might be in a head and shoulder activity or head and shoulder period here. Maybe I'm headed up towards the right shoulder. Maybe I want to invest until I get to that next peak of where the two shoulders equal each other roughly, and then sell at that point as it comes back down in the head and shoulder pattern. Once the neckline is broken, by the way, then the pattern is completed. That's when then you're on new patterns, you're on new trends. You might be in a rectangle. All things could happen at that point. But in a classic head and shoulder picture, this is what happens as far as a shoulder, a head, and a shoulder. All right, so this is one way to look at it. You can also look at it inverted, right? We're like upside down, right? Do this one because it's easier. You see the head, you see the shoulder. Now let's look at this same pattern. This is also head and shoulder. It's just inverted. And you can see where prices are declining here, right? And this might be something that might be more interest, because at the end you might be looking at rising prices. Here you can see a period of falling prices, falling to the first shoulder, in this case the left shoulder, rebounds back up to the resistance line. This is the higher price point, where it's like, no, I don't want to, and people don't want to buy higher, and that's what pushes it back down to the head, where it drives prices even lower, to a point where like, boy, this is so low, I got to go back in and buy. Once again, this is the market. Think of overall, lots and lots of people in the overall market. Bounces back up to resistance line, forms another shoulder. Once again, shoulders are the same, roughly the same height, or decrease below. They're the same level, maybe is a better way to put it. And then back up to the resistance line, forming an inverted head and shoulder. Now it could repeat itself in a head and shoulder period, but once it breaks that neckline, in this case the pricing resistance level, then the pattern is completed. And you might have a breakout, right? You might have a breakout where it's broken the neckline, and it starts to rise, and you say, oh, I've broken the neckline, I've done my two shoulders, because this is things happen where people go to a peak and then get out, they go to a deeper peak, the head and get out, and then they go to a peak again, and then overall it breaks out, is the idea. So in this case, when I come up to that neckline, I'm going to be watching. I don't want to be investing now. I'm going to be watching and see if it breaks that neckline, And once it breaks through that neckline a little bit, I might say to myself, oh, the pattern is done. We have a breakout. Let me start riding this breakout in this rising case now, because we might be rising past there once that pattern is completed. And you can see from the head to the right shoulder, we're in a period where we're generally on an upward trend. And when the pattern's done, the breakout might tend to go follow that same breakout pattern. Certainly once it breaks the neckline, that's the idea, is it should, or not should, but hopefully will follow that breakout pattern. So with head and shoulders, that's the idea you're looking for, is our heads and shoulders forming, what's happening at the neckline, and then taking action after, if you're starting to see a trend establish itself at that point. But it's a very, very common, very much covered head and shoulders, repeatable chart pattern, which with technical analysis and patterns, that's the idea. We want to see those repeatable patterns so we can then take action.